you always get kicked out. Like simple things, you can like the thing is, once you ship a game, the amount of changes you can do to the game these days you can do a lot more, but then you cannot make a huge change which needs more testing. You have to start hacking, putting some hack fix, and then what you do is once the game is kind of running properly, then you can go and do the changes for the next game. But simple exploits like that, like create a class, you can handle it in certain ways. Sometimes what we do is that we, one of the things which happened, like compared to Black Ops 1 versus Black Ops 2, was that we gave points for everyone who was capturing a flag in a domination game, right? So you have 3 flags, you can capture them, and then so what would happen, what would happen is that someone would just run around just these flags as they were getting capped, so that they can get that 100 points, they can get the 200 points. So at that point, when it's a gameplay related like balancing issue, then what we do is we kind of see what's the rate at which you are scoring, right? With respect to all these other like flag captures and stuff. And then we might say, oh, we might not even give you the 100 points. You might still feel like you have captured it, but you would have not got the points for it. So sometimes the game mechanics need to be balanced. Sometimes it will be actual exploits, and you will have to see, like, there are like crazy stuff which people do. And as you spot them, you try to see like, oh, what can we do? Like what if we can, how can we block them from not changing? So the goal is not to be hitting them with a hammer, sometimes you have to, but sometimes when it's very simple exploits, you can just work around and say, okay, just don't set this variable, like it's something which is like a configuration. So you can take different approaches for it. Any other questions?
How reliable in terms of percentages will it be when you send a message?
It's pretty decent. You again, it depends on what connection you have. Generally, like our tolerate the amount of packet loss which we tolerate is around 15%. If you have more than 15% packet loss, then there's no point playing the game. Especially a shooter game. So you can tweak that accordingly. Sometimes it can even be a router. So I have ended up debugging some of the issues where someone might have one particular service provider who there was some problem, and then sometimes it would be a router. So we would say, why is it not, what is the router's configuration, why is it not sending this packet properly, and what could we do as a measure for fixing that, so Unity is not bad. Unity is not as bad as on paper, but then again, it's the way you handle this package, because it can be even duplicates. So
you said there's something unchanged, then the server will just send the 0-bit next place. How does the server know that the client had the right data in the first place?
So the way it works is that anytime you join a game, the game sends something called the game state. So the game state is a big chunk. It can even go to like 40K, which represents the world. And then it will have a no delta snapshot, which means everything is fresh, right? So when you connect, that's the reason why you have a loading screen, right? You don't find any kind of things moving around. After that game state is being got, then the server is always going to keep sending based on the last acknowledged snapshot. So the server is just setting a delta position. But then the client-side logic will say, okay, what is the distance between what the server has told me, the origin of the player, for example, this is what the server has told me, and what I thought, right? And if that distance is like within like 1 or 2 units, it's okay, don't do anything, right? But then the client updates itself. So the server just determines where the client position is based on the inputs, and that inputs has an acknowledged number, right? So you know which packet is the client actually sending a delta, like the information from. So it works on either ways. Is there answer?
Yeah, that answer.
Okay. Any other questions? None?
How many, when you build your server farm for a game like Call of Duty Black Ops 2, how many simultaneous players you build? Can you
We
do?
generally during launch and like Christmas time, Christmas is generally the most popular time. We have clocked at least like during launch we have clocked I think like 2 million unique users playing at the same time. And those are the things which kind of Pat generally talks about, like online services and stuff. Like we handle like 2 million to 3 million concurrent users, and then after that, like depending on what kind of servers they are, like the theater files, like we have server data centers in so many places including LA, and they can almost get like 1 petabyte of data every 2 weeks. So that's the reason why they had to flush all the data, and that's one big reason why, like even when you play, you might find that only your last 50 games are shown, and then it's not reliable. So you either have to push it into your user storage or you lose it, because they will flush it out as there is more traffic. And during holiday season, it can even be like 4 or 5 days, because 1 petabyte will just fill up like that quickly. So.
How do you scale up and scale down for these kind of things? You know, because at sometimes in the day or sometimes in the year you're going to have like 2 million players, but at sometimes in the day you're going to have like 100,000. So obviously you don't want to use the resources for those extra 190, I mean 1.9 million people. So how do you?
So the thing is, so all our backend is handled by a company called Demonware, which is again owned by Activision. So they generally handle all these server farms and stuff. The thing is, it's reused for other projects, because we have Skylanders, we have all these other things. But at the same time, like it's kind of an estimate, you know, and that's probably one of the things which happened with Sims, right? For example, where they tried launching the game, they didn't know that many players will play, and then suddenly like everyone couldn't connect because they couldn't handle that much connection. So what we generally do is that just before the game launches, like before we submit the game, we generally send the digital copy of the game to Demonware, and all of us will try to connect. Yes, even then it will be like 200 players, right? That cannot scale up to 2 million. But then I think it's been through experimentation, because it's unpredictable, and one of the core ways to work on any game, like even if you have a dedicated server game, you know, and then like say for example like dedicated server, like some machine problem, you know, and at that time the client has to host the server, right? You have to, like we always write stuff in a way where even at the end of the day, if you turn off the dedicated server, like the client can still make a server and still play the game. Because who knows, like say we play like World at War or COD 4 for example, and then COD 4 had dedicated servers, if that was the case, then if it was completely dedicated server, and that's one of the big things which would happen now with Microsoft having their own like dedicated server systems and all this stuff for Xbox One. Imagine we have Xbox One, and I don't know what the next console might be called, maybe Xbox 2, you know. So if Microsoft moves from Xbox One to Xbox, the next Xbox, and they say, okay, all our dedicated servers are now going to be used by the next Xbox. What about the games which are people are playing for Xbox One, right? Then you will bump into that thing. So you have to write systems in a way where even if you turn off the machine, it should still function, at least to a decent level. And we do all the testing. It's all requirements for shipping the game. So.
One more question actually. I mean, before you launch these games, you obviously try to simulate your network and stuff like that. How do you possibly simulate 2 million people?
You cannot.
Then what do you do?
As simple as that. So one of the good things which happens with people breaking the street dates, you know, is the fact that the number of people playing ramps up slowly, and then we hit the peak during launch day, right? So generally what happens is we have our servers turned off. I think Demonware has kind of mechanisms to try to do load testing, but even then, like, you know, 2 million users having data centers with it, it's never a joke. So what happens is that, like, say Call of Duty launches on November 10th, people already start breaking street date from November 1st, you know. So what we do is we start turning on the server to a decent time for our testing, and then people start playing. And you don't want to spoil the experience for the people who have broken the street rate, because it's not their mistake, it's the people who are selling it, their mistake, right? So what happens is slowly you can start see the numbers ramp up, because so many people break the street rate, and then so that does help you with the simulation, you know. Some people might say it doesn't work, and as we are playing the game close to launch, we'll find those problems too. Sometimes it can even be a data center issue, you know. That's why, like, we have people from, like, Demonware has an office in Dublin, you know. So they play from Ireland, and that means, like, if they're connecting to a data center in London versus a data center in New Jersey, like, it will be different, and so they could find out those problems, and they are very well equipped for that. Any other questions? All right.
No, it's great, thank you.
That's